Many federal employees debate whether they should keep their money in the TSP once they leave federal service or move it to an IRA, and there is no perfect answer. This episode was designed to give you education and a framework so you can make the best decision for you. In this episode, we're going to cover our top 5 reasons why you should move your money out of the TSP. Welcome. I'm Ed Smith, President of Valor Wealth Partners, where we're dedicated to educating federal employees on your complex and often underutilized benefits. In this episode, we really want to give a counter to our last TSP tips video, which was the only one reason why you should keep money in the TSP, and look at how about moving money out of the TSP. I do recommend you check out that video because it does really give some good summary of that, but it also talks about some of the myths that you might have heard about your TSP and some of the counters of why you should be looking at different options of either staying or moving your money outside of the TSP. The first reason is to control taxes. Now, if all of your money is in one type of account, you are forced to conform to the rules of taxes for that type of account. And for most people, they keep a lot of money in their TSP in the traditional side. So we want to be able to look at what that means. So basically what happens if you have everything in that traditional IRA or the traditional component of your TSP, you need to basically pay the taxes on both the principal and the gains of that money when you take a distribution. And for some people, they have years that they take a lot of money out in one year, and other years it might be a lot lower. But if you can have diversity of the different types of accounts or the taxation on those different types of accounts, what happens is you can actually have better net returns. And net returns is what is left for you after taxes. So let's look at an example here. Let's say you have a normal type of spending that goes on, and then one year you plan a really big vacation, and maybe you also have something else good that's going on. Maybe you get an opportunity to buy another vehicle or vacation property, and you have to take more money out for the down payment. And then you get hit with some bad things, maybe some medical bills, or a family needs some money. When that happens, you have to take the money out of that one type of the traditional account, and it could force up your marginal bracket or the amount you take a pay of taxes on that level. This could be very costly in the taxes. But if you can control where the money comes from and the different tax diversification, this can be very beneficial for you. The 3 most common ways to be able to do it, or types of accounts you want to be looking at, is that traditional IRA, the Roth IRA, and then a non-qualified account or non-retirement account that would be fully taxable on the gains, but possibly at lower rates. So when you're looking at this, the traditional IRA is not taxed when it goes in, but it's taxed both on the principal and gains of the portfolio at your marginal brackets or ordinary income levels. The Roth IRA is taxed when it goes into the account, but it's not taxed on either the principal or the gains after you take it out. And then finally, your non-qualified or taxable type of account is taxed again, just like the Roth, before it goes into the account, but you are only taxed on the gains, and those could be at long-term capital gains rates, which are lower than your ordinary income levels. Now, if it's under 12 months, you still would have those ordinary levels. So you do have to watch out for those different areas. But there are different ways that you can layer the different taxes. Now, we don't know what the future tax brackets are going to be, but we do know what they currently are, and we can use those to plan. We can also make some assumptions of what we think tax brackets are going to be. The way this works with layering is that maybe you want to stay in the 12% tax bracket. So you take out money out of your traditional IRA or other sources of income like your pension and say Social Security up to that 12% level because you don't want to pay anything more. Then on top of that, you might take out Roth distributions so you're not paying any tax at all. And then on top of that, you might take out some from your taxable account, which would be only on a long-term capital rates of maybe 15 to 20%. So you're trying to layer this to reduce the amount of net taxes. If you need to take out everything from that traditional component, you might be forced into the mid to high 20s or even into the 30% brackets on a specific year where everything comes due in one year. So it's just ways to be able to plan this. Now, it's very important to know that if you do make money and take the monies out of the traditional side of the TSP or a traditional IRA and you move it to a Roth, you will be taxed on that distribution or when that happens and you make the move to a Roth or to a non-retirement account. So you are going to have taxes that you have to pay, but you control when and how much you pay because of proper planning to be able to look at these different scenarios. The second reason goes along with our first reason, which is actually converting your money to a Roth IRA. Now, unfortunately, you are not allowed to convert your traditional TSP to the Roth TSP inside of the TSP account. So this is something that's very bad because it would make a lot of sense that you could be able to do this. You can change the contributions that you are making from traditional to Roth, and we do recommend that a lot. But again, please make sure you're looking at your taxes and your unique situation before you specifically make any of those changes, because you want to make sure this is benefiting you on the tax-wise. So when we're looking at a Roth IRA, why do we talk about this so much? And it basically comes down to the principles of algebra. If all of the variables are the same, you'll get the same results. But if you change one or all of the variables, you might get better results. Now, note I said you might get better results because we don't know if you're going to be able to do or get better results in the long term by moving your money to a Roth. The three variables that we look at are tax rate, time, and rate of return. So if you look at the tax rate, we don't know if the tax rate now is going to be lower or higher than what it will be in 20 or 30 years. We think for the most part that it probably will be higher, but we don't know. So that's why you're taking a guess of if you should move to a Roth. The next one is rate of return. Now you can control the rate of return. So you get a lower rate of return from maybe say bonds like the G or the F fund, and you get a higher rate of return over the long period of time from the C, the S, and the I. So you can control those different variables. In the TSP, you can't do this, but that's something else that we have to talk about. And the last area is time. The longer time you have, the Roth IRA might be better for you. And when you're looking at time, the reason why this comes into factors is that a Roth IRA does not have the required minimum distribution rules. So there's different factors that you want to be able to look at on these different variables of why the Roth is going to be a good scenario for you. Now that we've looked at the functionality of the Roth IRA and what this makes sense to, let's look at about why we have all of this hype and why do we keep talking about looking at a Roth conversion or moving money to a Roth IRA. And what it does is it comes down to three basic areas. The first one is a Roth IRA is not taxed on its gains going forward. And right now we're in a situation where the market is declining. So if you move that money into an aggressive account, again, taking on more rate of return, and you don't have to pay taxes on that gain, that could be beneficial. And I'm not saying to move that right now, but I'm saying at the bottom of the market, that could be highly beneficial that you never have to pay taxes on the gains anymore. So it is something to be able to look at. The next area is Medicare cost and looking at IRMA rules and require minimum distributions. We talked about this very extensively in our last video on healthcare costs may be higher for federal employees, so please take a look at this. It really goes in depth, so we don't really want to spend too much time on that today. And the final area is long-term care costs or long-term care planning. If you plan for transferring of assets and moving them to either a trust or a person over multiple years, you might pay lower in taxes than having to do it all in 1 year because everything is stuck in that traditional component of the TSP. So there are multiple reasons of why you should move it to a Roth IRA from a traditional side of the TSP. Now, when we use the term Roth conversions, a lot of this functionality can be done no matter how you move it. So you can move it from a traditional component of the TSP to a Roth, or move it to that taxable account that we mentioned before. Either option means that you're going to have to pay the taxes today with the distribution from the thrift savings plan when you move it over to the Roth or the non-retirement account, but they both give you the functionality to actually protect on some of those different things like worried about Medicare costs or long-term care planning. So there's ultimately different options that you have, and while we use the terms Roth conversions, you might choose to not put it into the Roth, but put it into another type of account that is not in the traditional thrift savings plan. The number 3 reason of why you might want to move money out of your TSP would be for stronger diversification. Now, we've spent a lot of time already in this video talking about the tax diversification and different classifications of how you can do it. But what we're talking about here is asset allocation. Now, the thrift savings plan has 5 funds, and they can be a really good core portfolio or a foundation for your investment portfolio. But when you're looking at asset allocation, there's specific reasons of why you might want to have better diversification. One of them might be geographic. You want to be in a specific region of the world because you think it might outperform, or you might want to stay away from a specific region of the world because you feel it is not going to be good for you. You also can get some funds that may be state specific inside the United States as well. You also might have some passion around a specific industry. Like maybe you want to overemphasize a specific industry to make sure that you have the potential for growth. Maybe it's sort of like renewable energies or technology, or maybe you want to start investing in cannabis. You can't do that specifically inside your thrift savings plan. So having that diversification might give you the opportunity for some more growth, or it might protect you because you want to stay out of a specific area. So you have the ability to do that as well. You also have social conscious or social choices that you want to be able to make. Again, I talked about renewable energy, but maybe you want to stay away from certain areas like alcohol or tobacco. There's a lot of wide variety of reasons why you might want to make social choices and different types of investments that can diversify you away from the core funds that you already have. The last area is getting a deeper segmentation of those core funds. So you might look at the bond portfolio and you want to have better diversification, or you want to underweight or overweight specific areas of those areas. Let's say you're worried about inflation and specific bonds might be able to help you. That could be a reason. Maybe you want to be looking at emerging markets in the debt area because you think that that will be a better area for specific types of bonds. There's a lot of diversification you can go into these different segmentations, and each category, except for the G, allows you to be able to do this if you look outside of the thrift savings plan. Inside of the thrift savings plan, you're stuck with those 5 funds, which again could be a really good core portfolio, but it doesn't give you the diversification and the protection or opportunities that you might be able to have outside of the TSP. The number 4 reason of why you might want to move your money outside of the TSP is to seek professional guidance. Now, there are some advisors out there that will charge you to manage your TSP. For us, we don't really feel that that is a good investment on your part, but it does give you some good guidance. You can seek that without paying a special fee to be able to do that. One of the things that we're looking at when we're talking about professional guidance is we're not saying there's some secret investment out there that gives you a really good rate of return with no risk at all. It just doesn't exist. But what advisors try to do is they try to manage your emotions. So when the markets are going up or down, they're helping you get through those cycles. And a lot of times we talk about them with the greed and fear cycles. Another thing is sticking to your plan. By having a plan and a strategy ahead of time, you know what's going to happen and you can prepare for some of these situations. But sometimes the emotions just get too much for you and you have to make a reaction. You're just overwhelmed with, say, fear or maybe possibly greed, and you have to make some changes. So an advisor can help provide some strategies for you that aren't catastrophic to your investment plan, can help you weather the storm and get through the other side. This reminds me of a story that I had of a client that we talked about years ago. And when the markets went down, they wanted to sell all of their investments and they were just getting into retirement. So what we did was we sat down and we talked to them and said, hey, what do you need for the next couple of years to make you feel comfortable that we can weather this together? And we came up with a number. And we carved out and we took that amount of money out of their portfolio. So they did realize some losses at that point, but it wasn't their whole portfolio. And it allowed for their portfolio to recover because we didn't take everything out at a low point. So sometimes looking at things rationally when you're feeling very emotional can be a really good value from a professional and give you that guidance so you can think outside of the emotional side of what's happening specifically in your life, because I know I've lived through them before. They are very tough times, and it's easy to say these things when the markets are going up or moderately down. But when you're down 50, 60%, it's very difficult to think that it won't continue going down. When we look at this, there's 2 reports that I want to emphasize, and the links to these are in the description section. One of them was from Vanguard called Advisor Alpha, and it talks that the value of an advisor brings you 3% over the value of your portfolio. And that's quantifiable about different things that the advisor does. So this isn't just me talking about this thing, it's a study done by Vanguard. Another one is a study done by Dalbar, which is quantitative analysis of investor behavior. And it looks at the equity investor or the average equity investor returns compared to the S&P 500. So it's comparing like-minded investments. As you can see in this chart, through all periods of times, the investor did worse than the index. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this might possibly happen. I feel a lot of this is characterized because of emotions and people reacting either because of greed or fear at the wrong periods of time and buying and selling at the wrong time. And there's probably some of this has to do with the cost of investing, either the expense ratio or fees being charged. But this isn't looking at the average investor just average investor of professional guidance. It's looking at all people that are using advisors and not. So I think that while some of this can be attributed to fees, not all of it is. And I think the bigger contributor factor is emotion and behavior of people are doing and how they're looking at this. This study is also there. It's a very in-depth study. So if you want to read something and really dig into what people are doing and how they're reacting, this report can be very good for you. The final and fifth reason why you might want to move money out of your thrift savings plan is to gain control and flexibility. Now, with your TSP, they have a lot of confusing forms. They're frustrating, but most importantly, they're permanent. If you make a mistake and you send it into the thrift savings plan, there are no do-overs. You're stuck with the changes that you made. And like I said, they're confusing and frustrating. Some people don't understand the percentages and how they allocate different types of things versus different types of withdrawals. On top of that, if you want to take a distribution, you need spousal notarized consent. This is for both distributions and for loans. So if you want to take money out of your thrift savings plan, you not only have to get spousal consent, but it has to be notarized, which is a very cumbersome process to try to get both of you to go to an institution that will get a notary for you. With a beneficiary change, you don't have to get it notarized, but it does have to be witnessed. So another process that has to be a little bit more difficult than a lot of other companies. Now, when we've looked at a lot of the different TSP statements, we've seen that there's no beneficiaries at all. And yes, there are certain rules that the TSP follows if there is no beneficiary, but most people felt that they put the forms in and they had the beneficiaries on their thrift savings plan. And when we review them, they don't see them at all. Now, we don't know why this is happening. Maybe the forms got lost, but they're not checking to see what this is. And a lot of people are very confused of why they didn't have any beneficiaries because they thought they had a beneficiary on there for like 30 years. So it's very important not only to make sure that these processes get done, but they're also actually acted on and they're actually processed and that these things have been changed like the beneficiaries. Now, when you work with companies outside of the thrift savings plan, most of them have different options to be able to do. You don't have all of this requirements like a spousal signature or a notarized situation if you're changing beneficiaries. They also have a lot of electronic options to speed things up and to improve accuracy. The final thing is if you make a mistake, the company will help you to fix that mistake and not say, sorry, it's done, there's nothing we can do. So most companies are very friendly and they want to make sure that you get the right situations. Even if they cut you a check, a lot of times they'll get it returned and they can actually have it reissued, where the thrift savings plan will not allow that. We don't know if you should move the money from your thrift savings plan or keep it in it because we don't know you, and every person is unique. But hopefully today we've given you a framework so you can start looking at making a decision of what is best for you and for your family. To review, the top 5 reasons of why you should move money out of your thrift savings plan are to control taxes, convert to a Roth IRA, get better diversification, seek professional guidance, and to get better flexibility and control over your accounts. We want the best for you and your family, so please get conflict-free, unbiased advice. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to helping you in the next video.